The morning I turned 16 didn't feel like a milestone. In the movies, 16 is supposed to be about shimmering party dresses, driver's licenses, and the sudden magical shift from childhood to adulthood. But on that Tuesday, the air was heavy with the smell of sun-baked dirt and the lingering scent of stale tobacco. I woke up in a trailer parked in the back of Alan's property. It wasn't a luxury RV. It was a small, cramped space that we called home because it was the only place in the world where I felt safe. Neither of us was working. We didn't have a dime to our names. But as I opened my eyes and looked at the wood-paneled walls, I didn't feel poor. I felt relieved. For the first time in years, the gift I received for my birthday wasn't wrapped in paper. It was the absence of a threat. I was out from under my stepfather's roof. I was away from the violence that had defined my entire young life. If my 16th birthday was going to be spent sitting in a dusty trailer with the guy I loved, doing absolutely nothing, I was perfectly fine with that. Peace, I had learned, was a much better gift than any piece of jewelry. By the early afternoon, the heat started to bake the roof of the trailer. Alan looked at me, a familiar glint in his eye. He didn't have money for a gift, and he certainly didn't have money for dinner, but he knew the local economy worked on favors and excuses. "Let's go over to Greg's," he said, grabbing his keys. I knew the drill. Alan was going to use the "It's my girl's birthday" card to get a bag fronted. He wanted us to get high, mostly so we could forget that we were broke and that the cupboards were mostly empty. I didn't mind. In that world, getting high was the universal social lubricant, the way we soften the edges of a hard life. We pulled out of the driveway in his new Gran Torino. The windows rolled down to catch whatever breeze the road would give us. At the moment, I expected the day to peak with a few hits of weed and maybe a cheap burger if we found some change in the floorboards. I had no idea that a small conspiracy had been brewing behind my back. When we pulled into Greg's driveway, the front door swung open before we even killed the engine. Out walked Lucky. Lucky was one of those people who lived up to her name. She had a vibrance that seemed to defy the grit of our surroundings. She came down the porch steps with her arms spread wide, a massive grin on her face. "Happy birthday!" she yelled, her voice echoing off the neighboring houses. Before I could even get my feet steady on the pavement, she wrapped me in a massive bear hug. I was stunned. I stood there, squeezed against her, blinking in the sunlight. I didn't even think she knew when my birthday was. To be honest, I didn't think anyone outside of Alan really cared. "You didn't think we'd let today pass without a party, did you?" she asked, pulling back and looking me in the eye. That's when the real birthday began. It turned out that Lucky and Greg had been talking to Alan earlier that morning. They knew he was broke. They knew we were struggling. But they also knew what it was like to be 16 and feel like the world had forgotten you. They decided right then and there they were going to make a day especially for me. "We're going out," Greg announced, leaning against the doorframe with a smirk. "Dinner and a movie, our treat." To a 16-year-old girl in 2026, a trip to Sizzler and a drive-in might sound like a crappy night. But to me, in that moment, it sounded like a trip to Paris. I hadn't had a real birthday party in years. I hadn't felt like the center of attention for anything good in a long time. Before we headed out, we took care of business. We got high, like really high. It was that heavy, hazy 80s grade high that made your eyelids feel like lead and your heart feel like it's wrapped in a warm blanket. By the time we piled into the car to head to Sizzler, the world looked like a Technicolor movie. The Sizzler was the height of luxury to us. The neon signs, the smell of searing meat, the endless rows of the salad bar. Greg leaned over and told me the magic words, "All you can eat steak and shrimp." I remember sitting in that booth, the vinyl sticking to the back of my legs, feeling like a queen. The server brought our plates of fried shrimp, golden and crispy, and steaks that sizzled so loud we could barely hear each other talk. When you're 16 and you've spent months worrying about where your next meal is coming from, all you can eat isn't just a meal, it's like a miracle. We ate until we were physically uncomfortable. We laughed until our sides ached, the kind of deep belly laughter that only comes when you're with people who truly see you. The trauma of my stepfather's house felt a million miles away, eclipsed by the simple joy of a cocktail sauce-dipped shrimp and the company of friends. Leaving the Sizzler felt like stepping out of a dream and into the cool indigo hum of a California evening. We piled back into the car, the interior having that new car smell and also the faint, lingering ghost of the joints we'd smoked earlier. Our destination was the Foothill Drive-In, which to us wasn't just a theater, it was a sanctuary. As we pulled up to the ticket booth, the giant neon marquee towered over us like a glowing god. It hummed with that specific low-frequency buzz that neon lights have, flickering slightly as moths danced around the letters. Greg leaned out the window, handled the tickets, and we began the slow, bumpy crawl over the asphalt mounds. The drive-in had its own geography. You didn't just park, you claimed a territory. We navigated through the rows of slanted mounds designed to tilt the front of the car up toward the screen. The tires crunched over the gravel as we searched for the perfect spot. We passed families in station wagons with the back hatches open and mattresses laid out for the kids. We passed teenagers leaning against the hoods of primered-out Novas. And we passed old trucks where couples were already silhouetted in the glow of the screen. When we finally found our post, Alan reached out and grabbed the speaker. It was one of those heavy battleship gray metal boxes with a coiled frayed cord. It felt cold and industrial in the hand. He hooked it over the edge of the driver's side window, and as he turned the little silver knob, the sound crackled to life. It was tinny and thin, filled with static that made every voice sound like it was coming from another dimension, but that was the soundtrack of my youth. "Popcorn time," Lucky announced. She and I hopped out of the car, our feet hitting the warm asphalt. The air at the drive-in always had a specific scent, a cocktail of warm asphalt, exhaust fumes, and the overwhelming, heavenly aroma of artificial butter drifting from the snack bar. Walking to the concession stand was a gauntlet of social observation. The snack bar was a low, cinder block building in the center of the lot, bathed in harsh fluorescent light that made everyone look slightly ghostly. We walked past groups of guys leaning against their fenders, the orange cherries of their cigarettes glowing in the dark like fireflies. There was a low roar of 100 different speakers all playing the same pre-show music, creating a strange, echoing symphony. Inside the snack bar, the floor was perpetually sticky, making a rhythmic tack, tack, tack sound as we walked. We watched the popcorn machine, a giant glass box where the kernels danced and exploded, overflowing into a golden mountain. We got 2 of the biggest buckets they had, extra butter. I remember the weight of them. The warmth of the cardboard seeped through my shirt as I cradled them. We got the sodas in those tall, waxed paper cups that sweated so much that they'd turned soft before the double feature was over. By the time we got back, the coming attractions were playing. The screen was a massive, weathered white cliff face in the middle of a dark field. When the opening credits of History of the World Part 1 finally splashed across the screen, the whole lot seemed to cheer. But then, the gang revealed a secret. Lucky reached into a bag and pulled out something I never expected. They had asked Alan weeks ago what my favorite candy was. He told them Snickers. They hadn't just bought me a Snickers bar, they had bought a whole case of them. A literal box of chocolate peanut glory. We didn't have a traditional birthday cake with white frosting and Happy 16th written in cursive. Instead, Greg took a Snickers bar, tore off the wrapper, and stuck a single flickering candle right in the middle of the nougat. They sang to me right there in the car. 3 voices, out of tune, surrounded by the smell of popcorn and weed smoke. I blew out the candles and felt a lump in my throat. It was the most beautiful cake I had ever seen. The atmosphere inside the car became a cozy, hazy bubble. We rolled the windows up just enough to keep the chill out, but down enough to let the smoke drift out in thin ribbons. The flickering light from the screen washed over us, blue, then red, then a flash of white, illuminating the faces of my friends. There is a specific kind of magic in watching a comedy at a drive-in. When a big joke hit, like the Inquisition musical number, you didn't just hear the laughter in your car, you could hear a chorus of muffled chuckles and roars echoing from the cars parked all around you. Occasionally, someone would honk their horn in appreciation of a gag, a classic drive-in applause that rippled through the gravel lot. I sat there, wedged between the people who had claimed me as their own, my teeth sinking into a Snickers bar that had been cake only moments before. The sugar hit, the weed mellowed me out, and for those 2 hours, the threat of my old life didn't just feel far away, it felt like it belonged to a different person entirely. The drive home was quiet. The adrenaline had worn off, replaced by the heavy, contented sleepiness of a full stomach and a full heart. As we pulled back into the dirt lot behind Alan's parents' house and I climbed back into our little trailer, I looked at the stars. I was 16, I was safe, and I had a whole case of Snickers bars to start my new year. It was, without a doubt, the best birthday of my life. Looking back on that 16th birthday, I realized that the best gift I got wasn't the steak or the Snickers. It was the safety. I know there are people listening right now who might still be in the shadows I walked out of. If you're living with violence or you don't feel safe in your own home, please know that you don't have to carry that alone. There are people that want to help you find your trailer in the back, your place of peace. I've put some resources in the description box below. Reach out. You deserve a birthday where you feel safe too.